Monday. Time for
memes.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
come get cake on your velvet cape. Here are
Meme day.
Mondays.
Welcome back, players. I'm Jack with 36 Cancel, and this is Coco the Weiss Cat. It's that time again, the worst day of the week made better by the best kind of deck. It's Meme Deck Monday. So have you ever heard that saying, just because you can doesn't mean you should? Well, I'm here to tell you that that is 100% bullshit. If you see an opportunity to do something completely stupid and inane, you should absolutely take that chance. Especially when you see a new card spoiled on the Weiss TCG site and think to yourself, I bet I can do something hilarious with that card. Well, that was me about a year ago when No Game No Life was spoiled and I saw a new uncommon come up on the feed. And yeah, I know I'm late to the party for this by now, but hey, I've been working on other stuff almost constantly, so give me a break, okay? Anyway, I saw this particular card, read it a few times, and decided that because of the way it was worded, that it had potential to become the centerpiece in one of the most memetastic decks I've ever made. I honestly thought it would get eroded before it came out, and I was super glad when it didn't. Let me explain. This is Little Warbeast Girl Izuna. She's a level 0 with an Accelerate ability. If you accelerate at the start of your climax phase, this card gets +1 soul and +2k until the end of turn. So she's kind of a soul rush card, but what makes her so memey is her second ability, an auto that triggers whenever you accelerate. You reveal the top card of your deck, and if it's level 0 or lower, you can put it on the top or bottom of your stock. Keep in mind, climaxes are level 0. So the wheels in my head started turning, and I thought to myself, well, if you can put cards on the bottom or top of your stock, you can stack your stock so that if you reveal a climax, you can put it on the top and then put all the characters you reveal on the bottom. This effectively lets you stack your stock and pay out nothing but climaxes when you do pay it out. But then I thought, well, wait, these cards all accelerate and they don't have to be in the center stage. So if you have 4 of these out, you can accelerate 4 times and get 16 triggers on this ability. And then, what cemented the idea was this final realization. If you make a deck of 42 level 0s and 8 climaxes, this ability will never miss. But why would you want to do this? Well, let me present this thought experiment. What if you were to gain 19 stock in a turn, with the top of the stock being almost all climaxes except for whatever you managed to trigger while attacking? What if you did this for 2 turns after encoring your Little Warbeast Izunas and put 38 cards in stock? And then, what if you managed to get every non-climax card out of your deck, so that all you had left was cancels? The potential to set up this fabulously troll-tastic scenario made me more excited than a kid unwrapping a new game console on Christmas morning, so when the set came out, I ordered some singles since No Game No Life wasn't a set that interested me for its more conventional decks, even though I really did enjoy the show. I did some playtesting with different possibilities, and I finally settled on this. It's worth mentioning that this was also a really interesting deck-building challenge. Obviously, if you're trying to set up this very specific game state, you need to design a deck to support that, and of course in this particular deck, your choices are limited to the level 0 game of a single set. Luckily, level 0 happens to be where a ton of the filtering and searching is in Weiss 4s, so thanks to that, the deck is basically 4 Little Warbeast Girl Izuna and 38 other level 0s that try to get her on the stage as soon as possible. But the deck also has good brainstormers, interesting tech, and even 2 level 0 climax combos, so let's take a look at how this shaped up. Obviously, we have Little Warbeast Girl Izuna as our centerpiece, and we already went over what she does, so why don't we move on to her level 0 climax combo. Power Beyond Physical Limits Izuna, a base 2/5 and with a single ability, which is her climax combo. When she attacks, if you have 5 or less cards in hand and Blood Destruction, a green stock soul, is in your climax zone, you can top check 3 and add a character. And you don't have to discard a card either. It's basically a free +1 and free stock, which makes it free advantage at level 0, which is perfect for this deck. Obviously, it's not your main combo, but it's nice if you happen to have it. Now, the deck actually has one more level 0 combo, and it's Jibril, our resident masochistic flugel. Now, she has a secondary ability, which is really the main reason she's in the deck. When she goes into the waiting room, you can put a card from your hand into your clock and then search up to 1 game character from your deck. Obviously, that's to tutor out your Izunas, but the climax combo is nice too. When she attacks and Power of Flugels is in your climax zone, you can pitch a card from your hand. If you do, this card gets +X power, where X is the power of the card facing it. Now, it's worth mentioning that this is the only climax combo like this in English Weiss. It's pretty interesting, and it happens to be on a card that helps you search out your Little Warbeast Girls, and it also happens to be a gate climax, which means free salvages, so it's kind of a no-brainer inclusion. So those are our 2 level 0 climax combos, and of course our main combo with Izuna. That constitutes 3 of the 11 unique cards that are in this deck, not counting climaxes. That's right, there are only 11 unique cards in this deck. Like I said, this deck is basically a bunch of 4-ofs and some randoms to fill out the space since 4 doesn't divide evenly into 50. And most of these are tools to get your Izunas out, or some generic good level 0 tech. but level 0 is where most Brainstormers of Weiss are, and this deck runs 2. Let's take a look at them. The first one we have is Humanity's representative Shiro. When she comes in, you can put the top card of your deck onto the bottom if you want, and she's a tap self-searching Brainstormer. Something to remember here is that if you put more characters into your stock, your Brainstormers become a lot more effective. And of course, they're a tool to get your Izunas into your hand one way or another. That's why I'm running 7 of them. I'd honestly run 8, but Humanity's representative Shiro is an expensive little bugger. So that's where commonsensical hard worker Steph comes in. She's a tap 2 salvage Brainstormer with another ability to give something plus 1k if one of your characters gets reversed. She's not a particularly amazing Brainstormer, but she's just one more way to get Izuna into your hand. And that's our brainstorming package. We run 7 of them, though ideally we'd run 8, because it's just so important for this deck to set up the Izuna combo as soon as possible, and that means getting 4 of them on the stage ASAP. So the rest of the toolbox is mostly ways to do just that. First and foremost, we have 1/2 of Blank Sora. He's the trial deck's pay 1, pitch 1 searcher. For the price of 1 stock, he turns any card in your hand into a little Warbeast girl, so he's exactly what you want. Drop searchers are trademark cards of Weiss, and they really don't need any further explanation, so let's move on. Next, we have Knowledge Esteeming Race Jibril. She's a Climax Salvager, so you can drop a Climax to salvage a character on play. Again, this lets you filter your hand and pick up Izunas that have fallen into your waiting room early. She also has an ability that can mess with your opponent a little bit though. When she comes in, you mill 2. If you mill a Climax this way, you can put the top card of your opponent's deck into their waiting room and then choose a card in their waiting room to replace it. It's worth mentioning that you can use this to force canceling or get rid of waiting room change targets, but the utility of the other ability is pretty fringe, and the card is 99% there to Climax salvage. Another card that's pretty much 100% here for its ability to grab your Izunas is Game God Tet. You can pitch a card and put him into your waiting room to salvage a game character. This is a -1 tutor with no potential to attack if you use the ability, but sometimes that's exactly what you need. Get your Izunas at any cost. Now, this is about where the searching and salvaging tech ends, because in No Game No Life, this is about the extent that isn't locked into Steph, Sora, or Shiro, and they're not Izuna. So the remainder of our package, which is an impressive total of 3 characters, are just some generically fitting level 0s. The first is Prodigy of Ingenuity Shiro. She's a 1k base runner that top checks 2 and puts them back in the same order when she comes in. She lets you top check for your Brainstormers, and she's a free runner. She's a 3 or 4 of in most No Game No Life decks, including this one, but she can also top check for this other piece of tech we have here, which is Phil Nevalin. When she attacks, if you have 1 or less other characters, you can put the top card of your deck into your waiting room, and if it's a level 0, you can put it on your backstage. So if you don't hit a Climax, it's pretty much always a free card to the stage, and she also happens to be a level 0 Clock Bomb, which is pretty much never bad. All in all, another great card that really shines in this deck of 42 level 0s. There's one last card to go over here, and that's true form of the game Jibril. She's a level 0 reverser, and when she dies, you can pay 2 to draw a card. In an all level 0 deck, she's a good way to spend your stock if you need to, and of course, it's a +1. Generally, she's not an amazing card, but she fits here as the final card to round out our lineup. If I had a 4th 0 Brainstormer, I'd probably cut her down to 2, but I'd also consider her as the deck's flex slot, where if I was experimenting with different tech, and trust me, I did before I decided on this build, she would be cut first. Okay, so that's our lineup. Obviously, this wasn't split into levels because, well, that should be easy to figure out. But now we transition into the part of the deck tech where I talk a little bit about how to play this deck. So how do we do that? Well, you don't. This deck is terrible and never works. Even as I was putting the concept together, I knew that reaching this deck's ideal game state was pretty much impossible. Sure, you can bank a lot of stock, but there are many problems. First, between your level zone, your waiting room, and your hand, there are a lot of zones where non-climax cards can still occupy and end up being back in your deck, and that's just tough to control. Second, to do this, you need to deal a lot of damage to yourself. You're taking 8 damage at the absolute minimum to set this up, and this puts you a level over your opponent. And keep in mind, you're basically generating no card advantage. You have no combos, no hard pluses except your Brainstormers and the level 0 Climax combo, and no finishing power at all. The deck is basically Soul Rush and Prey. In my piloting of it, since I wasn't able to set up the ideal 8 Climax deck before it was too late in most games, I just settled for losing for having no deck and no waiting room, which, by the way, is an extremely plausible scenario if you continue to use Izuna, and a hilarious way to lose. But I have gotten close to this game state a few times, so here's how I did it. First and foremost, you need to get the Izuna engine online as soon as possible, so when you draw your opening hand, you discard anything that isn't Izuna. This means Climaxes, Brainstorms, Search Tools, everything. And then you open by turning what's in your hand and on the stage into 4 Izunas as soon as possible. Discard Climaxes, go negative on hand advantage, do whatever it takes. Because if you don't have 4 Izunas on the stage by turn 2, it's basically too late. And by the way, 3 Izunas is not good enough. With 3 Izunas, you go from 16 triggers to 9 triggers, which means 12 stock instead of 19 per turn, and that's not going to cut it. You're dealing yourself so much damage in this deck that you absolutely need that mileage, so if you can't get this up, you're basically SOL, so you can either A, treat the deck like a Soul Rush deck and not care, or B, deck yourself out eventually with Izuna triggers and laugh. I usually go for the latter because people just don't realize that this can even happen, but let's say you're lucky and you manage to get 4 Izunas on the board when you're level 0. Obviously, you do the full combo, 16 triggers and 3 attacks. When you use accelerate triggers, it's obvious that you want to put the characters on the bottom of your stock and the climaxes on top. When you do, be sure to keep track of how many cards down your last climax is so you know what you can afford to encore. Then relay that to what you have in your hand and what it's going to take to do this again, because obviously you'll lose your Izunas next turn. I'd recommend putting 2 Izunas in the back row to maximize their staying presence, since they don't have to be in the center stage to accelerate. Also, keep in mind, you'll be going through 19 cards this turn, so count your deck and make sure you're not screwing yourself on the refresh either. If all goes well, you'll get 16 stock, attack 3 times, pay out any climaxes for encoring, and then go to the next turn, grab your dead Izunas back somehow, do it again, and then you'll have the majority of your deck in your stock. From there, just ride it out until you eventually run out of attackers or run out of climaxes because you take refresh damage 10 times. And congratulations, you've achieved Weiss4's immortality. Look, don't build this deck. Even aside from the myriad of instability I've described, there are 10,000 reasons the deck doesn't work on days that aren't February 29th. This is way less of a deck and way more of an experiment with what stupid ways a card can be exploited. In other words, a meme deck. Players, it's not always about winning. Sometimes it's just about sending a message, even if that message is, I'm stupid and I don't know how to play the game. Alright players, that's all for this deck tech, if you could even call it that. But I hope it brightens your day knowing that, yes, this is actually something you can technically do in Weiss4's. I know I had a ton of fun with the concept, and I've wanted to share it for a long time, and now I did, and we can move back on to more serious content coming down the road. But don't worry, it'll be Meme Deck Monday again soon enough. So as always, thanks for watching. Peace.